Alright, hey guys, welcome back to Listography. I am back, although probably going to be a brief return for me as I've got my next semester of school starting up again in a couple of weeks. But here in between semesters, I wanted to try to get a few videos out. This one's a big one, my favorite albums of the year, doing a top 100. Before I get into that, I want to just say thank you to everyone who's subscribed and new to the channel since I've been away. It's been pretty cool to see how the channel has continued to grow even in my absence. I also wanted to say a quick thank you to CalicoSilver, who gave me a nice shout out in one of his videos, which I'm sure drove some traffic to my channel. If you don't know his channel, it's great, go check it out. He talks about music and stuff over there as well, and he's a lot better at talking than I am, so definitely a channel worth your time. But yeah, here we go. It's 100 albums. Now, last year I divided this top 100 into 5 different videos, 20 in each video. This year I'm just going to try to plow through them and keep it to one video, so I'm not going to talk a lot about each album. Even as we get into the upper echelon, I'm going to try to be pretty brief. But I will put together a little YouTube playlist for you guys. I'll put like one song from every album that I think is the most essential. If you're interested and you want to go check something out, you can hit up that playlist and give these things a try if you're not familiar. Alright, so let's get into it. Number 100, To the Top of the Hill and Roll by Pet Deaths. This is the debut album from the London duo who describe themselves as celestial folk. It's a very atmospheric and ethereal rock record. At number 99, In League with Dragons by the Mountain Goats. The indie legends return with their 17th studio album. I didn't like this record quite as much as their last record, Goths, but it's definitely still a record that's worth checking out. At number 98, it's going to be The Long Game by Jonathan Rice. This is his first record in 6 years, and the 4th record to be released under his own name, and it takes a much more stripped back approach than some of his other records. At number 97, I have When This Life Is Over by And the Kids. This is a really solid indie pop record from this female-fronted Massachusetts band. At number 96, I have Stone Child by Jessica Hoop. This album doesn't have some of the pop hooks that some of her earlier albums have. It feels much more traditional in its approach, but Jessica Hoop is still a phenomenal singer-songwriter. At number 95, I have the self-titled album by Jade Bird. This is her debut album. There are some good tunes here, but by far the most notable thing about this record is her voice, which just has a very gravelly rasp to it, and it's awesome. At number 94, I have Lux Prima by Karen O and Danger Mouse. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked this record. I don't know why, but I didn't have very high hopes for it. Danger Mouse production is as predictable as ever, but it is well suited to the songs here, as well as Karen O's voice. And the songs here are really good, and the arrangements are really well thought out and carefully put together. At number 93, I have Beneath the Eyrie by the Pixies. I'm one of the few people that I know of that has really enjoyed this sort of second coming of the Pixies since their reunion. I loved Indie Cindy. I thought Head Carrier was pretty solid too. For me, this is another strong effort in what has been one of the most successful reunions in rock since Dinosaur Jr. At number 92, I have Vagabond by Vagabond. This is a singer-songwriter record with a lot of really interesting sonic flourishes, a lot of different interesting rhythms that you wouldn't normally associate with the genre, as well as a variety of electronic elements. Vagabond was a great discovery that I came to late in the year. At number 91, I have Efflexion by Telekinesis. The power pop of Michael Lerner has been a favorite of mine since I first heard the band's debut album back in 2009. And this is another hook-laden addition to their already excellent discography. At number 90, I have Lighten Up by Matthew Logan Vasquez. This is the Delta Spirit frontman's 3rd solo album, and it's perhaps his most simple, straightforward, and direct music he's ever made. At number 89, I have Chris Cohen's self-titled album. Here, the former Deerhoof member delivers a record of slightly psychedelic indie pop. At number 88, I have 10 Years of It by Ian O'Neill. The Deer Tick guitarist strikes out on his own with an album's worth of tunes that could have just as easily found their way onto an album by his main project. At number 87, I have Years to Burn by Iron and Wine and Calexico. I got majorly burned out on Iron and Wine years ago, so now I never really get excited to hear any new music by them. In fact, I usually avoid checking out their new albums as long as possible just because I've really been kind of tired of their music. But when I do get around to it, It's usually hard to deny its greatness, and that's the case here again. Just great songs, great arrangements, great performances. It's very, very good. At number 86, I have Curve of Earth by Otis. This is just a weird little indie folk record that I stumbled upon this year. At number 85, I have When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go by Billie Eilish. This is easily the best mainstream pop record that I heard this year. This record definitely has a lot of flaws. In fact, it might be the most flawed album on this whole entire list. It's got several tracks that I really don't even like at all, but the production is really interesting, really fresh. The songwriting is great, and I think the thing that gets overlooked the most when it comes to Billie is how just great of a singer she is. She's really got a phenomenal voice, and I think there's a lot of promise and potential in her, and the highs on this record are really high, really great. There's some really excellent tunes on here. At number 84, I have Internet Arms by Diane Coffey. This is the former Foxygen drummer's third album under the name Diane Coffey. This is the first time, though, that they're really diving headfirst into synth pop, which is the perfect accompaniment for these songs, which are about the effects of technology on our daily lives. At number 83, I have Wu Dang by Daniel Norgren. I discovered Daniel in 2018. I think he's an absolutely immense talent, great songwriting. He's an amazing singer, really good guitar player and musician. Although this is a good record, I don't think it fully captures the full scope of his greatness. If you ever get the chance, go check him out live. You will not regret it, but also check this record out in the meantime. At number 82, I have Tales of America by J.S. Ondara. Ondara is a Kenyan singer-songwriter, and although the songs here are great, like Jade Bird, I think the main draw to this record is his beautiful and unique voice. At number 81 is the album Cheers by The Wild Reeds. They're an indie folk rock band that employ great three-part harmonies. Occasionally the production on this record is a little too slick for me, but the great songwriting and performances are able to overcome the issues that I have with the production. At number 80, I have King's Mouth, Music and Songs by the Flaming Lips. I'm sure there are Flaming Lips fans who feel like the more experimental and crazy the band gets, the better. For those fans, this record might be a little bit disappointing, but for me, someone who's only really ever been kind of a casual Flaming Lips fan, this is a welcome return to their classic sound. It might not be as good as The Soft Bulletin or Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots, but hearing them operate in this same ballpark again makes this, for me, the most enjoyable album since at least At War with the Mystics. At number 79, I have The Cedars by John Vanderslice. This isn't my favorite John Vanderslice record, but sonically it's really amazing. If you like vintage synths and sonic landscapes that are rich and textured, then this is definitely a record you're going to want to check out. At number 78, I have Night Pass by Pure Bathing Culture. This is an album that reinvents the less cool, soft rock side of 80s pop. The songs here are both sonically and emotionally rich. They're danceable and catchy as hell. At number 77, I have Can You Really Find Me by Night Moves. Night Moves are a band that blend acoustic, folky instrumentation with synths and electronic elements better than almost anyone else. They can also jump from one of those extremes to the other with incredible ease. They also have fantastic vocals. At number 76, I have Undress by the Felice Brothers. I feel like the Felice Brothers are pretty much a staple of my list from year to year. They're just really consistent and dependable. They always serve up some good Americana. At number 75, I have Basking in the Glow by Oso Oso. Emo might be my least favorite subgenre of rock music, which makes this a very surprising entry on this list. But to me, this record is just power pop in disguise. It's a great catchy rock record and it sounds fantastic. At number 74, I have Zag by Jackie Cohen. This is a very theatrical indie pop record with the Lemon Twigs serving as her backing band and produced by her husband, Jonathan Rado. It's on Space Bomb Records, which is one of my favorite labels. I like just about everything they put out, and this is no exception. At number 73, I have Conversations by The Dove and The Wolf. The Dove and The Wolf are a French folk pop duo who are now based out of Philadelphia. This debut for Fat Possum Records comes after a string of EPs. At number 72, I have Blame My Body by Little May. 3 years after their Aaron Dessner produced debut, Little May return with a more diverse sound, but the songs and harmonies are still great. At number 71, I have the album Seeing Other People by Foxygen. This album didn't seem to get a lot of love when it came out, at least not in the reviews of it that I saw, but I still think it's a pretty solid record. It's not my favorite Foxygen record, or even as good as their last album, but I think it's a very enjoyable listen, especially if you like kind of like mid to late 70s disco rock crossovers like Bowie's Young Americans, then this is going to be a record you want to listen to. At number 70, I have Ever Since I Lost My Mind by Susto. The band's leader, Justin Osborne, takes over complete creative control on Susto's third album of rootsy American rock. At number 69, I have My Finest Work Yet by Andrew Bird. This is another one of those artists who's just incredibly consistent and reliable. If you like his past work, you'll undoubtedly enjoy this record as well. It features all the trademarks of his best records, and it has a strong batch of songs itself. At number 68, I have Easy Way by the Cactus Blossoms. These brothers are great at recreating the sounds of their 50s and 60s rock and roll heroes. Roy Orbison, the Everly Brothers, Louvin Brothers, and a faint country twang come together to make some of the most authentic sounding throwback music that I've heard this year. At number 67, I have Other Girls by Lily May. She doesn't get the same amount of attention that her Third Man Records label mate Margot Price gets, but don't sleep on Lily May. If you like classic country, make sure you check out this Dave Cobb produced record. At number 66, I have Awestruck by Twen. This is the debut album for this psychedelic dream pop duo. I love Jane Fitzsimmons' vocals and the jangly guitars that are all over this thing. At number 65, I have House of Sugar by Sandy Alex G. There's been a lot of hype surrounding this guy for years, and I've been checking out his records for a little while now, but this is the first time that any of his records have really connected with me. Really good, catchy songs, and simple but interesting production. At number 64, I have Fishing for Fishies by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. These guys crank out a lot of music. I think they released something like 5 albums last year. They put 2 out this year. Sometimes I'm a fan of what they do, and other times not as much. They put out kind of like a thrash metal album later in the year this year that I didn't really get into. I much prefer this record from earlier in the year. It's kind of a garagey blues rock album, and perhaps my favorite thing that they've ever done. At number 63, I have Sunset Kids by Jesse Malin. I was a fairly big Jesse Malin fan back in the day, but I've kind of lost interest over the years. His records all seem to be very similar, just pale imitations of the one before it. But this year he bounced back with a really strong set of songs. Still not really changing up his formula, but he's back to doing it at a much higher level. At number 62, I have Phoenix by Pedro the Lion. Admittedly, I never really listened to Pedro the Lion on their first go-round, but now they're back and reunited, and I get a second chance. I really enjoyed this album almost immediately. Good tunes, good stories, I love the sound of the guitars, just a really powerful and uplifting rock record. At number 61, I have the album Simpatico by Golden Days. This is the band's sophomore album, and it's a laid-back, dreamy affair. If you like the quieter and more laid-back side of indie pop, then this might be a record that you'd want to check out. At number 60, I have the album Olympic Girls by Tiny Ruins. The New Zealand band, led by Holly Fulbrook, return with their third album. I hear a lot of English folk influences in this record. Their arrangements are very deliberate and purposeful, and all in all, just a really beautiful indie folk record. At number 59, I have the album I by Bon Iver. To me, Justin Vernon is one of the best and most important artists of the last 10 to 15 years or so. His last 2 records haven't bowled me over the way his first 2 did, but there's still a lot to love here. Great melodies and vocal performances and really beautiful production. At number 58, I have the album Adventure by Twain. This is a better, although a less immediate follow-up to his Rare Feeling album from 2017. Just very beautiful, simple songs. At number 57, I have the album Anak Ko by Jay Som. Jay Som has shown a ton of potential up to this point, but Anak Ko is such a huge leap forward for her that I can't really say I saw it coming. Definitely the best set of songs that she's put together to date, paired with easily her best sounding production. At number 56, I have the self-titled album by the country supergroup The Highwomen. It's no easy feat to make a record that feels timely and culturally significant. The fact that the Highwaymen did that within the context of a country supergroup makes it one of the least probable albums of the year. At number 55, I have Less Ready to Go by Michael Now. Scott McMicken of Dr. Dog produced this Bandcamp exclusive record. It's slightly psychedelic and experimental indie folk. At number 54, I have the album Slow Fascination by Big Search. I don't think I like this record quite as much as 2016's Life Dollars, but this record is still very good. Fantastic layered harmonies and really classic sounding songwriting. At number 53, I have In the Shape of a Storm by Damien Jurado. Following an amazing trilogy of albums, Damien Jurado scales things back on this record. We've got nothing but acoustic guitar and voice here, and although he's taking a much simpler approach here, the songwriting is still at the same high level as usual. At number 52, I have the album Fever Breaks by Josh Ritter. After being one of my favorite artists in the previous decade, the 2010s were much more hit or miss for Josh Ritter. He released several very good records in the last 10 years, but also a few that were just a little too vanilla for me and not very interesting. Here he enlists Jason Isbell to produce, and it's just what the doctor ordered. Isbell toughens up Ritter's sound a bit, without overpowering his excellent songwriting. At number 51, I have All Mirrors by Angel Olsen. Olsen piles on the drama with a heavily orchestrated record. Some of the rawness and angst of her previous albums is lost here, but there's no denying the beauty of this record. Okay, at number 50, I have the album Remind Me Tomorrow by Sharon Van Etten. This is another singer-songwriter who changed up their sound a little bit in 2019. Remind Me Tomorrow uses synths and other electronic elements to build chilling atmospheres around these tracks. This is a much less organic sounding record than she's ever made, but it's no less compelling or powerful. At number 49, I have the album Sinner by Leslie Stevens. This is a country record, but with a touch of the Laurel Canyon brought by producer Jonathan Wilson. At number 48, I have Scenery by Emily King. I think this is the only real R&B record to make the list this year. Fantastic production, great grooves, great vocals, and catchy hooks. This is exactly what Top 40 radio should sound like. At number 47, I have UFOF by Big Thief, one of the best bands of the last decade, and they had just a huge year in 2019, releasing 2 albums. For me, this is definitely the weaker of the 2, although I know a lot of people will probably disagree with that. And actually, I think this is probably the weakest album in their entire discography. It's beautiful for sure, but it feels just a little bit lackadaisical at times. They bring in a few tracks from Adrian Lanker's solo album from last year, and none of those songs that they redid are quite as good as those original versions. But like I said, it's still beautiful and has some sneaky melodies that will worm their way into your brain. At number 46, I have Tip of the Sphere by Cass McCombs. Cass McCombs is one of the rare artists with songs that I love, but who doesn't really have any albums that I've been able to get into. County Line is one of my favorite songs of all time, and yet the album that it's from, Wit's End, is just okay to me. There's nothing as good as County Line on this record, but for the first time ever, I've really enjoyed one of Cass McCombs' records from start to finish. Early in the year, I thought this might be able to crack the top 20, but as always, way more great music came out than I anticipated. At number 45, I have the album Enderness by A.A. Bondi. This is one of the more unique sounding records of the year. I just love the uneasy vibe of this record. It's a little warped and a little weird, but it's great. At number 44, I have Mint Condition by Caroline Spence. Hotel Amarillo was quite possibly my favorite song of 2017. Nothing here really stands out on that level, but repeated listens to this reveal that she's still one of the best country songwriters around today. At number 43, I have the album Further by Richard Hawley. I love Richard Hawley's voice, but especially when he's crooning over quieter ballads. Some of his other recent records have found him rocking out a bit more than he used to, and they didn't really connect with me quite as much, but here he finds a nice balance between the two sounds. At number 42, I have Walk Through Fire by Yola. As far as powerhouse vocalists go, Yola is the best to come around in a long while. I can't think of anyone else recently that's even remotely on her level. Maybe the closest I can think of is Brittany Howard, but not really. But the thing that really sets Yola apart is her great songs and knowing how to use restraint with that amazing instrument of hers. At number 41, I have Why Hasn't Everything Already Disappeared by Deer Hunter. This was the first release of 2019 that I listened to back at the beginning of the year, and it held on all year to finish at a very respectable number 41. The sound of this record picks up pretty much where 2015's Fading Frontier left off, so how much you enjoy this record will likely mirror how you felt about the band's change of direction back then. All right, at number 40, I have The Competition by Lower Dens. This is the fourth album from the Baltimore band turned duo. They sound a bit like a more upbeat and danceable version of Beach House, but that description definitely sells them a bit short. These are great, catchy songs with deep personal and political lyrical content. At number 39, I have Better Oblivion Community Center. Connor Oberst and Phoebe Bridgers team up on this new LP. They spend most of the album singing together in unison, and they sound surprisingly great and very natural together. And of course, the songwriting is the quality that you would expect out of the two of them. So a very good record. At number 38, I have The Book of Traps and Lessons by Kate Tempest. This is a record of spoken word poetry over beds of music. This record can be very powerful and moving at times. It might not be a record that you have on repeat, but it is a must listen for sure. At number 37, I have What the Broken Hearted Do by Tim Heidecker. Funny man Tim Heidecker collected a cast of some of the best studio musicians around. He got Jonathan Rado of Foxygen to produce the record and made a classic sounding LA record that recalls the likes of Harry Nilsson and Randy Newman. If that's your vibe and you like warm sounding analog recordings, then definitely check this one out. At number 36, I have Raw Honey by Drug Dealer. This is another record with a retro sound. On Raw Honey, Drug Dealer's second album, they recreate the sounds of early 70s AM radio. Touchstones like The Carpenters, Looking Glass, and Player are given their proper due with lovingly crafted homages. At number 35, I have Thrashing Through the Passion by The Hold Steady. This is easily the best Hold Steady record since 2008's Stay Positive. Ever since Craig Finn started releasing solo records, The Hold Steady has seemed like little more than an easy paycheck for the rest of the guys in the band, while Craig gets his artistic fulfillment elsewhere. And even though Craig released an even better solo album this year as well, the two projects have never felt like they've been given such equal consideration before. At number 34, I have Purple Mountains by Purple Mountains. Rest in peace to David Berman. The legendary Silver Jews frontman returned to music after a decade-long hiatus this year. The record was produced by members of the band Woods, who also perform on the record, with other notable guests like Kyle Forrester and Anna St. Louis. Berman passed away less than a month after the album's release. At number 33, I have On the Line by Jenny Lewis. This is a fantastic record from top to bottom. Every track is super memorable, making it one of the best of her career, possibly my favorite solo album of hers, and ranking right up there with the best of the Rilo Kiley records. At number 32, I have Placeholder by Hand Habits. Hand Habits is the project of Meg Duffy, one of indie rock's most well-traveled guitarists, having played with everyone from The War on Drugs, to Kevin Morby, to Wise Blood, and William Tyler. This is the second album by Hand Habits, and it's a huge step forward in terms of writing and production, and there just seems to be a whole new level of confidence at work here. At number 31, I have the album Rain on Dust by R.F. Shannon. This is another band that I've been following for a few years now, but it never really knocked me out until this year. This is a beautiful psych country record. It's pretty mellow and acoustic for the most part, great melodies and harmonies. You'll hear hints of a lot of different influences from Graham Parsons to the Grateful Dead and early R&B records. The results are just stunning. At number 30, I have the album Salt by Angie McMahon. McMahon is an Australian singer-songwriter. She has a very powerful voice, which at times reminds me of Florence Welch from Florence and the Machine. Thankfully, Angie doesn't feel the need to constantly belt at the top of her lungs or attempt to make every song sound like an epic stadium anthem. Her songs and arrangements show a great deal of maturity in the way she uses dynamics and takes a less is more approach. At number 29, I have the album Warmer by Jeff Tweedy. He might not be making records as good as Yankee Hotel Foxtrot these days, but we have seen a resurgence from Jeff Tweedy as of late, following the lull of Star Wars and Schmilko. Last year's Worm was excellent. And this installment is probably even better. And that's not even taking into consideration the other record he put out this year, which we may still see on this list yet. At number 28, I have the album Both And by Luke Temple. The man behind Here We Go Magic has returned to releasing music under his own name. His style is a little bit hard to describe if you're not familiar. Definitely folky, but with subtle electronic elements as well. His music can be atmospheric and futuristic at times. He's a very singular artist, and I can't recommend him enough if you're not familiar. He also produced Adrienne Lenker's solo album last year and toured with her. So if you're a Big Thief fan, he might be someone that you want to check out if you aren't already familiar. At number 27, I have the album Ma by Devendra Banhart. Once the leader of the freak folk scene, people seem to have stopped using that term, which I think is a good thing, as that term severely undersold the sophistication of what was really happening in his music. He takes influence from Vashti Bunyan and Arthur Russell. I can also hear bits of things as diverse as Donovan and Pink Floyd in his music. His music, and this record in particular, is a very diverse melting pot of sounds and styles, and the results are gorgeous. At number 26, I have the album Seeker by Michael Cronin. One of the great power pop artists of our time returns with a record that's a bit darker and tougher than usual, but it's still packed full of memorable melodies and hooks. At number 25, I have Who Are You Now by Madison Cunningham. It's unbelievable that she's only 22 years old. Excellent songwriting, guitar playing, and singing. I hear elements of Blake Mills, Andrew Bird, and even a little Fiona Apple in her sound, but it doesn't come out sounding derivative of any of them. At number 24, I have I Need a New War by Craig Finn. This is Finn's fourth solo album and the third installment of a trilogy, which included Faith in the Future and We All Want the Same Things. His writing is as sharp as ever, and the production from Josh Kaufman is stellar. At number 23, I have Ode to Joy by Wilco. Not quite on the same level as classic Wilco albums like Yankee Hotel Foxtrot and A Ghost is Born, but a fantastic album in its own right and a vast improvement over the band's last two albums. Between this and the two most recent Jeff Tweedy albums, there's a lot to be happy about in Wilco world. At number 22, I have I Am Easy to Find by The National. The National continue their streak of fantastic albums. Here they alter the formula slightly by having a guest female vocalist on each song. At number 21, I have Heart Hunger by Myrna. This is synth-laden pop with dreamy vocals out of the Bay Area. These are some of the most carefully crafted songs I heard all year, just so well arranged. Sonically, everything has its own space carved out. The songs build and develop beautifully, just a really gorgeous record. All right, now we're into the top 20, getting to the really good stuff now. Not that all of it isn't great. But here we go at number 20 with Father of the Bride by Vampire Weekend. Possibly the first time in their career that Vampire Weekend put out a record that wasn't better than the one that came before it. But that doesn't mean that this isn't a great record. Any concerns that the departure of Rostam would leave a hole too big to fill were quickly squashed with excellent singles like Harmony Hall. The rest of the record is full of other great pop gems as well as some of the band's most experimental tracks yet. At number 19, I have For the Morning by Tyler Ramsey. I've been a big fan of the Band of Horses guitarist's solo albums for a while now. At this point, it's safe to say that he has completely eclipsed his main band. This record has a lot of really great songs, great vocals, awesome guitar playing, and it sounds fantastic as well. At number 18, I have Titanic Rising by Wiseblood. This is yet another Jonathan Rado produced album. Seems like I love just about everything he touches. This album is lush and epic with huge cinematic orchestral arrangements. The vocals are gorgeous too. Natalie is the modern day Karen Carpenter. At number 17, I have Full Moon Heavy Light by Ona. You don't see a lot of bands coming out of West Virginia, but that's exactly where the indie rock band Ona are from. This is their second record, and it was recorded with Drew Vandenberg, who has worked with the likes of Montreal, Deer Hunter, and Future Birds. This is a fun and catchy little record that also carries a certain amount of emotional weight with it as well, which ultimately is what makes it so memorable. At number 16, I have Ideal Man by Andrew Combs. The excellent songwriting and great singing of Andrew Combs collide with the production of Sam Cohen, who's neck and neck with Jonathan Rado right now for the title of my favorite producer. Sam definitely adds a layer of interest to these songs, but he doesn't get in the way or try to change Andrew's sound that much. At number 15, I have Designer by Aldous Harding. Not really sure what to say about this one. A very unique indie folk record that truly needs to be heard. Another meticulously crafted record, great arrangements. And for what it's worth, my brother saw her in concert this year and said it was the best of the nearly 30 shows he saw in 2019. At number 14, I have the record Gold Past Life by Fruit Bats. I know everyone's experience on Pandora is supposedly different based on what you thumbs up and thumbs down, but I feel like everyone who listened to any sort of indie-themed station on Pandora in the earlier part of this decade probably heard a handful of Fruit Bats songs and probably heard them about 1 million times each. But if those are the only songs you know by Fruit Bats, I definitely recommend checking back in with them because their last few records have been excellent, and this one is no different. At number 13, I have Showboat Honey by Kyle Craft. Kyle Craft's debut, Dolls of Highland, is one of my favorite albums of the decade. Though this record doesn't quite soar to that level, I still think it's a really great record, and his particular brand of glam rock and Dylan-esque street poetry will scratch an itch for certain classic rock fans that they maybe didn't even know needed scratching. At number 12, I have Forever Turned Around by Whitney. Sophomore albums can be tricky. Whitney here decided to take the if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach, and even though it doesn't do a lot to expand the band's sound, the songs are of such a high quality that you won't really want them to be messing with the formula much at all. At number 11, I have the album Paper Castles by Alice Phoebe Liu. I just discovered Alice's music this year and I just fell in love with her voice. It's so expressive and she can do so much with it. It's very jazzy and has great vibrato. She can rough it up a little and get a nice gravelly distortion going. She can belt, she can whisper, she squeals on occasion. She can really do anything, and it doesn't hurt that her songs are great as well. Now into the top 10, the best of the best. At number 10, going with Miami Memory by Alex Cameron. I didn't love this album at first. I didn't think it stacked up to Forced Witness, and I thought some of the lyrics seemed a little bit forced, but as I went back and re-listened to it a few times, I quickly realized I was wrong. This is another great record full of great stories and interesting characters. Still probably not quite as good as his last album, which was my number 2 album in 2017, but it's a lot closer than I initially gave it credit for. At number 9, I have the album Two Hands by Big Thief, the second of the 2 albums released by them this year, and for me, the far superior release. This record is much more raw and direct. The melodies are strong and hook into you almost immediately. It doesn't have a knockout track like Paul or Shark Smile, but front to back, this might be their strongest effort to date. Okay, you'll have to forgive me for my pronunciation on this next one, but at number 8, I'm going with the album Atras Alem by Uterno. This is the latest addition to my list. I discovered this record just about 2 weeks ago. It can be a little risky to place something this new so high up on this list. I could still be feeling that little rush you get from discovering something new and exotic, so I could be overrating it because of that newness, but alternately this thing could also continue to grow on me, which it has been doing so far. Right now, number 8 feels about right for this record. Just really cool stuff. It's got a lot of great sounds on it that are reminiscent of 60s pop. At times it's folky, at times it's very ornate and orchestrated. Definitely highly recommend this one. At number 7, I have the album Eraserland by Strand of Oaks. The somewhat weak Hard Love nearly wiped out all of the promise that Strand of Oaks had. They seemed poised for a huge breakthrough that never quite happened on the level that you would have expected. So to follow that record up, he got together with Carl Bromell and the rest of the guys from My Morning Jacket and made Eraserland, an album of anthemic heartland rock. If you love the War on Drugs or Tom Petty or Springsteen, then this is a record from 2019 that you definitely want to check out. At number 6, I have the album Crushing by Julia Jacklin, another album this year that I didn't think lived up to the artist's previous work at first, but this record is a really slow burn and It takes quite a bit of time to really get its hooks into you. It took about 6 months for me to realize that this album needed to be ranked among the cream of the crop. At number 5, I have The Future Is Still Ringing in My Ears by Sam Cohen. He released my favorite album of 2015. He and Kevin Morby at the 930 Club was my favorite show that I saw this year. He's one of my favorite producers, songwriters, guitarists. He just really can't do any wrong in my book, and I feel like this album is still continuing to grow on me. At number 4, I have Texas Piano Man by Robert Ellis. Robert Ellis has been one of my favorite artists since I first heard him, probably in 2011. He's an unbelievably gifted musician, probably one of the best guitarists on the planet. But here he swaps his axe for the ivories, and the payoff is astounding. As much as I've loved everything he's done, I can admit that his albums never quite seemed fully formed. The first album of his that I heard was Photographs, which had all of the folky material separated from the rollicking country tunes. While it was great, it was disjointed. His follow-up to that, Lights from the Chemical Plant, had too many slow songs, which were great in their own right, but they killed the album's momentum and flow. His last album was a big improvement, but still had a few skippable tracks here and there. This album is just solid all the way through. The songs are fantastic, they flow together really well, the musicianship is still top-notch. I'm very excited to see what he'll do if and when he decides to return to the guitar. At number 3, I have Atlanta Millionaires Club by Faye Webster. Faye Webster is a brilliant songwriter, and this record brings together a wide array of unexpected influences from hip-hop and R&B to country and Hawaiian music. I made a full video about it earlier in the year if you want to go back and check it out. At number 2, I have Bird Songs of a Killjoy by Bedouin. I love Bedouin's 2017 debut album. She makes some of the most beautiful folk music you'll ever hear, but I didn't really see how she could possibly improve or evolve her sound. It had emerged so fully formed, but this new record is just on a whole other level. The songs, performances, and the recording, everything is just top-notch. Definitely a record you have to hear. And at number 1, my very favorite album of 2019, I'm going with Oh My God by Kevin Morby. Another Sam Cohen produced record. This isn't like last year's best record by Cutworms that was full of catchy, memorable songs. It was just a fun, addicting record. This record is less about individual songs and more about the overall vibe. This is a record to be experienced in a single sitting. I love the lyrics, the mood, the feel. If you like the Velvet Underground, Lou Reed, Bob Dylan, or Nick Cave, this is a record that you must check out. It's a very, very cool and sounds fantastic. And yeah, I think it's the best record that came out this year. Make sure you give the video a like if you liked it, hit the subscribe button, and most importantly of all, leave some comments below. Tell me what you think of my list, and I'd really love to hear what some of your favorite records of the year were, whether it's just a top 5 or top 20 or whatever you want to leave. I'm very interested to hear, and thanks again.